So one of the most iconic and interesting moments in the Beatles recorded catalog is the use of the orchestra in Day in the Life. And the story goes that John had a couple of verses and Paul had a short chunk of music that was going to go in the middle of John's two verses, but they had no idea how they were going to connect these bits up. So they fell upon the idea of using a full orchestra, which was conducted by Paul on the recording session. And what they did was they gave the orchestra a starting note over a course of bars and then a destination note that was much higher. And the orchestra was told, get there however you want, keep it smooth, but we all arrive at this incredible, George Martin called it an orgasm of sound at the end of this glissandi. And it just became this incredible effect that they used twice in Day in the Life. And we thought, well, wow, you know, that would be a really cool thing to try with the brass. So we decided we would use it as a backdrop for a collage of different iconic Beatles brass moments, including the piccolo solo from Penny Lane, which has its own history and a great story, and the beautiful French horn stuff from Sgt. Pepper's. So it became this really cool collage of sounds. It's early in the process we realized that people's memories, be they conscious or unconscious, aren't just for the tunes, but actually for the textures and the timbres that the Beatles, utilized. So
yeah, one of the really cool things about having Dean Westman on our design staff is he's also the director of the Avon Symphony Orchestra in Indiana. So we actually got the availability of using the orchestra kind of in mid-May when they were still in school to actually help them record some of those orchestra cacophony ideas. So what we're actually having happen live is the brass voices from the cacophony, and then we have also the recorded elements from the Avon Symphony Orchestra. So that's the cool thing about it, is it's not some sound library that we've used. I mean, we actually were able to really help sculpt exactly what the players were doing kind of live in real time throughout that. So it's been really fun kind of having that mesh of acoustic and organic elements.
Yeah, it fills in the gaps of the brass, and it really creates that glissandi like towards the top pitch. So for the brass, we did exactly what the Beatles did. We gave them a starting note and then a destination note at the end, which resolves. And we really left it up to them. It's really essentially chance music, which is, I don't think has been done on the field before. Now, obviously, we have to keep it consistent so that we have a consistent effect night to night. But the players actually decided what they were going to do in between those two pitches. And it's worked out to be a really, really cool and interesting event for us. And of course, our soloists in front of that, the Penny Lane and the French horn quartet, are just performing wonderfully. So. And a neat little Easter egg in the cacophony too is when the Beatles were recording, of course they didn't have the orchestra there. That was dubbed in later. So they had their roadie, Mal Evans, count the empty bars. And a lot of people never heard the counting until these tunes were released on CD finally, and suddenly all this stuff started appearing that you wouldn't really notice on vinyl unless you had an incredible, system. But so Mal Evans, the roadie, the Beatles roadie, and dear old friend, counted, I think it was 34 or some bars, and Paul was just plunking away on the piano badly over those 34 measures, and he counted each measure, and then they set an alarm clock off at the end. So we decided, well, I really like that counting thing. It's kind of cool that they included their buddy. So we decided we would get our prop manager, John Millsap, who's been with the group for a few years now. We got him to do our counting for us, and so he actually appears in the drum corps show very briefly during the cacophony.
Yeah, trying to take some of the inspirations from what they were doing at the time and really kind of using the technology we have available to us to do those same type of things.
Yeah, and we were really drawn to the experimental nature of that orchestral project for the Beatles, and I think the experimental nature in general of their music, and I really hope that permeates our show as well, because we've tried to, lend it kind of an experimental edge, and really pleased with it so far.
Yeah, because one of the really interesting things is tunes like A Day in the Life, they never performed live. It was impossible for them to perform what they did in that tune live, and so it's things like the cacophony and things like what we're doing really with a lot of the rest of the show really couldn't be possible without what we have today.
That's right. Yeah.